Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the Unity workshop. We're gonna have a good time, and it's a Pog experience for sure. Wow, there are a lot of chats. Okay, I'm the reason why I didn't do um, anything before this, like there were no files or stuff sent out, is because if you're anything like me, you might not have downloaded those. So this will be starting you from absolute scratch, and we'll be working our way through the basics of making your own game. I'll talk to you a lot about the fundamentals, and it's all about the fundamentals. So I'm going to start and hop on my slides and do a quick presentation. Here we go. Okay. Intro to game dev. Wow, exciting, I know. I'm almost as excited as you might be. I'll turn on the laser pointer and hopefully you guys can see everything. Okay, so hello, my name is Chinamram Chivo. I'm in my first year of computer engineering at the University of Waterloo. Woo, woo, Warriors. No one ever says that. I have 3+ years of game dev, and I'm currently on campus, living the life on the 9th floor, and I love tinkering with electronics. So if you have anything that needs fixing, let me know. We'll start off by addressing some of the things on this slide. There's that thing, but more importantly, there's this link. So this link is on every slide, at least I'm pretty sure it is, and this leads to a Google Doc, which has all of the important links for this chat. And I will just start this, another link. Now there are 2 links, I know, twice as confusing. This is for any questions you may have. So feel free to go here and I will read them closer to the end. We're starting with the agenda, and there's a lot to cover, and this should cover approximately 85 minutes. I will try to keep a steady pace, something that's not too fast and not too slow, because this is aimed at people who are beginners. We'll start by doing an introduction and setup of Unity from scratch. I'll talk a bit about the game fundamentals while Unity downloads for everyone. We'll discuss the Unity interface, importing assets, scripting, input, output, game physics, game objects, user interface, then do some questions closer to the end. Sounds good? Yeah, sounds good. Okay, we can continue. First of all, actually, I will start by having us all go to this link at the bottom. So if you can type this in, rb.gy/bt, I will post this in the chat so that everyone can see it. Someone already, no, not yet. rb.gy/btjwxw. btjwxw. Gotta put the HTTP. Bless your soul. Okay, so if we all go to that link, we see that it leads to a Google Doc, and the first link in the Google Doc is the Unity download. So I will stop streaming my slides and I will start sharing my screen. Okay, so if you come over here and you click download Unity beta, you'll see 2 buttons, and we're going to want to go with the Unity Hub. I already have it downloaded, but I'm going to download it again just to get twice the Unity in my system. We're going to click here, and it's going to go through the terms of service, which you should read in depth, of course, before you sign away your soul, and press I agree, pick a folder to install it in, and I already have Unity Hub running, but for you, it might take a little bit longer. There'll be a couple different menus that you'll have to, press enter through, and then you want to finish and have Unity Hub pop up. So that might take a little bit, and after that, you're going to want to download an actual installation of Unity. So that would require you to come to installs, click add, and then click the most recent version. So I'll go through that again. We're starting in the projects place, we click installs, add, and then we're going to select the Unity 2020 LTS version. One more time, we go installs, add, then go to Unity 2020 LTS. And I will stop it there for now in terms of the Unity stuff because it's likely that you are still downloading. Instead, I will come back to my slides and we will we'll do a little back history. That's not a term at all, but I'll give you a little insight on some game dev terminology and important game dev stuff. Okay, sick. So game development, what is it? How does it work? Great questions. I'd say there are four key aspects of making a game. The first of which is the scenes in the camera. So when we start making a game, you need like a background in order to play the game on. So the scenes in camera are basically what looks at everything and tells us where things are. So if we have a 2D game like Mario, you would have a 2D scene, whereas Call of Duty, you know, might be three-dimensional. And the scene is like the playground where everything happens. So it's where our characters can run around and move about. So they will be focusing more on 2D, but Unity has some beautiful 3D options as well. And the scene has a camera, and this camera is centered usually around you, the player. In a 2D game, this camera has a specific viewport, which is only part of the entire game, and it follows you, the player, around as you move. In a 3D game, it's the same concept, except three-dimensional. So you have your player position, and you can look around, move X, Y, Z, and whatnot. And the scene is where everything happens. And we have effects that can be placed on top of the scene to change how things look. So let's say you had a gunshot wound or something, you might have an effect like this. Or if you're dehydrated, something else might happen. And those are like sunglasses that an artist can put to make the game feel different. And the reason why I'm going through these things is, one, to have time pass while we wait for it to download, but also because it's really important to get the fundamentals down when it comes to making games. And I really want you guys to think about this, because by the end of this this period of time, you'll hopefully have a project that is not fully complete, but complete enough so that you understand the basics and continue adding your own flair. So these different aspects of game development are things I really want you to keep in mind when adding your own flair. What effects can I add? How can I make my game stand out and be different? How should the camera move? What should the lighting be? Oh, we haven't gotten to that yet. And more importantly, what assets do I want to use? Great transition, well done. What is an asset? So in game development, an asset is like a character or a tree or a gun, or it's what you put inside of the playground. It's what's inside of your scene and being captured by your camera. There are two main types of assets. You have static assets and dynamic assets. So static assets typically don't move. So maybe you have a tree, and each asset has different properties or parameters that are specific to it. However, you also might notice that these transform mesh material are on both the dynamic and the static asset. That's because in Unity and in most game creation engines, you have properties that are synonymous with all assets created. And we also notice that the player is dynamic because it's player controlled. So one might add more properties such as physics or specific code to control the player movement, which we'll get into later. Additionally, it's important to consider whether you're doing a 2D or 3D game. So we'll be focusing on 2D, obviously, because it's quicker to load, it's quicker to learn, maybe that's questionable. But when you have a 3D game, it's made of different shapes. And now these shapes are called polygons. Remember that, there will be a test. And we have little triangles that are basically connected, and they all together make up a 3D mesh. Whereas in 2D, we simply have a sprite. Now, 2D sprites are usually PNGs or SVGs because those are faster to load, and they can be large, they can be small, but those are the main differences. Whereas in 3D, you have like an OBJ file where you created your 3D model, and then you need to import that into the scene and then apply materials and shaders and then have it be seen through the camera. And if I come back to effects, some things you might have heard of before would be like ray tracing or, you know, DLSS super sampling or stuff like that. Different ways to basically interpret the model that's on the screen. We won't go into any of that today, but I just want you to be thinking. And then code. This is the sick part. It's the brains of the game. It's the laws of physics. It's what makes things move. Unity has a whole lot of built-in functions. With Unity, we program in a language called C#. So if you've ever done object-oriented programming in like Java, it's a little bit like that. It's a little bit like a lot of languages. It's like, it's not, I wouldn't even say it's that close to C, but it's like C, but sharp, you know what it is. And yeah, the code is the brains of the game. So today we'll be getting into that a little bit, dibbling and dabbling in some C# code. It might scare you at first, but by the end of this, hopefully you'll feel a lot more comfortable. And the code controls a lot of things. So it controls like the transforms of the player. Let's say you had weapons, and these change with time. So you might want to store those weapons in a weapon file and then change that dynamically as the scene progresses. And we'll figure out how to do all of this in code as time progresses. Today is what I mean. And then we have the system that we're running it on. This is another very important topic to remember. As we go through this lesson, I will touch a couple times on optimization and how we can make things run smoother on slower machines. Now, this is something that is kind of being talked about less and less as everybody's cell phone can power a moon landing or something. You know, everything is becoming more powerful, but it's still important to consider the limitations of different platforms or systems. So is it a mobile phone where you might only have a gigabyte of RAM and like, you know, a tiny SSD? Is it a console where you have more RAM? Is it PC where you might have unlimited RAM and unlimited storage space? And as such, you need to make sure that you're matching your meshes and your materials to the system that you're trying to run it on. So these are all important things to think about before. And also you want to think about the input methods. So with a phone, you have things like the gyroscope or the accelerometer data or motion sensors or touch screens or tilts, all of that, photo, video, you know, they all come together to have different input methods that say a controller might have with a console. So these are just different things to keep in mind as you make your game. Hopefully that should have wasted enough time. Now we're coming to the test. Now these are 3 questions I want you to think about. So what are these shapes called? What? I won't actually answer them. I want you to, and some of these I haven't answered, but we'll figure them out as we go. I want you to also keep them in mind. Which would render slower, a 2D sprite or a 3D game object? And most importantly, how can we control the ball? What would we need to do in order to make it move? So think about those. I won't tell you the answers, but if you were paying attention, these should be pretty obvious. And yeah, hopefully Unity is loaded. So we will come back to another file. Might seem like we're jumping around all over the place, but for good reason. Oh, people are writing things. Holy, that's a good idea. Yes, good idea. Okay, we're coming back to this file. And now hopefully everyone can still see my screen. We're gonna come to this project demo link. So we click here and we go to this GitHub project. GitHub is a file sharing service. We click download right here and place that wherever. I already have it, so I'm not gonna download it twice. And that is the second of 3 or 4 important links that we have on this beautiful page. So click download and download this. And then we're gonna open up the Unity Hub, which is hopefully all ready. Yeah, you're supposed to allow access for all that kind of stuff. And as I said, I'll go through this one more time. We go to install, we click add, we click on Unity 2020, we click next, okay, and then it's gonna ask you to install dev tools. So you want Microsoft Visual Studio Community if you don't already have it. You can also use VS Code, but this is typically better for C# working. And documentation. If you're on a Mac, you might have different options because, you know, that's Windows, pretty much Windows specific. But yeah, get that and then come to projects and we're gonna click add new. So we're going to want to make a 2D project and recall this. Wow, what a unique name. What is this? What should this be called? Potato salad. Nah, descriptive. Angry Birds 3? Question mark? No question marks. Angry Birds 3. And choose a location to save that in. And we're going with 2D, but Unity is always adding different things that I've never tried out. VR is especially cool. But yeah, every time you come here, there's something new. So that's cool. And we're going to create our Unity game, give it a 1.5 seconds to load. More like 30 minutes, am I right? Unity. Yeah, it's going to take a little bit. And when we do this, I'm going to follow it up by giving you a quick run through of the different parts of the Unity game engine, and the key components that we need to keep in mind. Show you where everything is, and then we'll import the assets we downloaded, and then we will start programming. Sounds like a plan. Yes, I'm not stalling for time. Another thing is this link. So this link is currently active, but it's mostly for afterwards. So if there are any questions you forgot to ask during this presentation, go ahead and send them here. Speaking of questions, you've probably asked some. I will check them later. And that's just so we can keep a decent pace as we move around all over the place. Okay, we come here to our beautiful Unity app, and I will explain what a few of these things are. So we have the file exploration system. I mean, the typical, new scene, open scene, that kind of thing. We're not going to fully explore this today. The most important parts are the hierarchy, and there you can see different objects that are in our scene. Unity starts with something called the main camera. This is where our game will be seen through the lens of. In order to start actually playing your Unity game, you click this play button. Right now, nothing will happen. If I click it again, we exit. If you want to see how the game will look without playing, we click game, and we can see how the game will look without playing. I'll come back to scene. And then over here, we have our inspector. So this tells us the different properties of the object we currently have selected. Currently, I have the camera selected, so it tells me the different properties of the camera. In our assets, we have nothing. However, if you follow the instructions and clicked on this project demo link and clicked download over there, you will now have a file. And we can add this file, drag it, bird art, into here. And it will say this. So I'll give you guys 1/2 second. There are a couple ways you can add it. You can also open this place in File Explorer and copy the downloaded file into it. But I like dragging. And you will see this import Unity package come up. Once more, I will do that again, just in case anyone missed it. I was in my downloads. I had the thing I downloaded from my GitHub. I dragged it into this assets place. Sick, riveting. And then I'm going to click import because it is important. Am I right? Okay. 1/2 second. Give me 1/2 second. One sec. Uno momento. Okay. I'm going to start screen sharing again. Okay, just checking to see. Ah, yes. Okay, okay. I might have left some people in the dirt. So yes, very, very important that I come back to that. One thing I did not mention is if you come back to Unity Hub, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to log in. I overlooked this because I'm already signed in. But a cool gamer tip is if you have a student account and you have the GitHub student package, you can actually get pro Unity for a year. So it's a pretty sweet deal. So yes, make sure you're logged in, and after you've logged in, you should be able to access the project. So it's already open, but I hope everyone is following along okay. GitHub Student Pack, that's exactly what it is. If you have the GitHub Student Pack, you get a year free. Yes, it is a sweet deal, and there are a lot of other things that come with that as well. Okay, so now we have this folder structure down here, and we're gonna explore this a little bit. So yes, we shall get started. The very first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open this folder up, come to birds, and I'm going to click on this one with the eyes open. So you'll notice that that adds the bird character to my Unity scene. And if I click on it, I can drag it around. A few things I should mention. Oh, let me just make sure I'm actually screen sharing, because that would be important. Yes, I am. Sweet. A few things I should mention is how to move around. So if you're using a mouse, you can use the middle mouse button. You can also use the right mouse button in order to pan. If you want, you can come up here and use the different tools. So that is the tool to pan. This is to move the different objects in your scene. And the objects are stored here. They're called game objects. So this is a game object, this is a game object, and they're all within different scenes. So that's how the general hierarchy is organized in Unity. So I can move around different game objects in the Y and the X axis. I can also try a couple different things. So let's say I wanted to scale it. I could take these and drag it, make it really fat, make it really small, and Control Z or Control Z undoes the changes. I can also come to, no, that's just use Control Z. Yes, what else about moving? We'll click through the projects, we'll take a look. If we come back to birds, we'll see that there's 4 different states. So it might not make sense what these are used for at first, but I will explain those as time goes on. Okay. Another thing is there are different ways to add these assets to our scene. So I dragged it onto here, but if I also drag it here, it always adds it at the 0, 0 spot. This is wonderful if you want very specific positioning, but you can also always change that here. So 0, 0. And another important thing is saving. So Control S would save my level. And let me actually hit play so that you can see how our game looks. We're pretty much done at this point. So you have a bird that stays in blank space and doesn't move at all. And I know you're pretty excited for where this might be going. So now we need to start adding in some functionality, movement, physics, that kind of stuff. So bird physics, how do birds move? Great question. The first thing we need to do is add in a physics component. So we want to make sure that our red bird is selected. Right now it's red bird closed, but I'm actually gonna pick the beak red open one. That is this guy. So it's the third one. It doesn't really matter that much, but and I'm gonna drag him onto my scene. And if I want to, I can rename my bird. So I want to rename my bird. I can click here, call it red bird. I could also click here, press F2, call it red bird. Or I could right click, rename red bird. And then now we'll talk about the sprite renderer later, but we want to first add component. And there are different sections. So right now I'm searching something up, but if you come here, this is what it should look like. We're gonna come to the physics 2D section. And we wanna select a couple things. So the first thing we wanna find is the rigid body 2D option. So that is this one. We could also add that by, if I, yeah. So now that we have the rigid body 2D object, and now if we press play, you'll see some magic happen. What? Did you see that? The bird fell off the screen. It's crazy. This is what controls how the bird falls. So let's say we were on Mars and this was 0.25, and then we press play. Now he falls a lot slower. If I set this to negative 0.25, that's not what I set it to, negative 0.25, it's gonna fall upwards, crazy. So yeah, one is pretty realistic, so we'll stick with that. It's not yet a game, but we're gonna basically make Angry Birds 3. So the first thing we want to do is, control the bird so that it can go in the direction we want. And we also want him to be able to collide with things. So we'll actually start with collisions. Yeah, so in order to add a collision to our bird, we're going to click Add Component and look up collisions, or COLL. And we see there are a whole bunch of different options. And now what shape is a bird? We could go with box, that could work. We could go to box, or we could go with a whole lot of things. But what shape is a bird? A bird is a polygonal shape. Thank you for the right answer. And now that you know the bird shape, we can change the shape if we wanted to by clicking Edit Collider and moving these points to make it more accurate to our bird. And then now that we have a beautiful bird that is able to collide with things, we need something to have the bird collide with. So I'm going to come to, there are different properties stored in these folders over here. I just want to double check that I'm not going too fast. Seems no complaints. Okay, that's what I like to hear. So there are different assets stored in these folders. We're going to take this one called Summer Ground and place it under the bird so that the bird can collide with it. Now we need to have this object be able to collide with the bird as well. So we're going to add a collider called the box collider. So that is this collider, so that now the bird and the ground can collide with one another. So now if we press play, what? Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Is that a bird and the ground colliding with one another? Epic, very epic. So this is a pretty small piece of ground. We can change the size of this ground. So what we can do in order to change the size is you can do this a couple ways. If I was naive, let's pretend that I am, but obviously, I don't even know what naivety is. I could change the size of this by changing the scale. So I could come over here, can change the Y value, I can change the X value, but that looks pretty whack, right? It's very grainy, not very cool. How could we make this ground tessellate by itself? A couple ways, but the easiest way to do this would be to come to the draw mode on our sprite. So if we come to the sprite, we see draw mode, we click simple, and we change this to tiled. Now when we change the size, and we can change the size of the object by clicking on the rect tool. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the fifth tool over at the top left here, and that changes the size. And you can see now it tessellates beautifully. I like tessellation, kind of a fourth grade legend. However, if I press play, what do you think would happen? You're right, absolutely nothing, because nothing ever works on the first try. That's a very important rule in game development. I can tell you even before this happens that it's not going to work, but it's not working because it's not even playing. That's hilarious. It almost did. There we go. He falls through. What? I thought we just had this working. If we click back on it, we can see that the collider is only in the middle of the ground. So that's not what we want. We want the collider to be all the way on the entire size. So what we can do is come to Box Collider, and there's an auto tiling option. So we're going to check this auto tiling box, and now the collider is the same shape as the ground. Now if you press play, you'll notice magic happens, and the bird falls on the ground. Another game fully complete. My work here is done. What else? We're pretty much done. Let's increase the size of this ground. Let's make it at the bottom here and increase the size. Why isn't this snapping into place? It seems like it's just freely moving all over the place. Well, that's because we're not currently snapping to our grid. As you can see, there are these grid lines in the background, but we're not using them at all. In order to turn on grid snapping mode, there's this little magnet over here. What? Why can't I turn on grid snapping mode, you might ask? You need to exit from the rect tool and come to any other tool, or the move tool. And then when you click on the magnet, it should work. If it isn't working, check that this is global. If it's local, you also won't be able to change the snapping. So make sure this is set to global and click on the magnet tool in order to snap. Now when you move, you'll notice it snaps into place. And if you look at the position values, they move in increments of 1. So that's more my speed. I always like moving in increments of 1. So, okay, now when you press play, the same thing should happen. It should collide with the ground, and everything should be sweet and dandy. Let's just make sure. Okay, it's not loading. I love Unity. Who doesn't love Unity? I mean, come on. I will tell you that would have worked. So we'll keep going for now. Next up, we'll add the background. So it's pretty ugly right now. But in this environment folder down here, or yours might be on the right side, but I think with newer Unity versions, it's down here. You click on the background and we can just drag it in. So now we have a beautiful summer background for our game. Yes, and it also moves like that. So let's move this so it's just there, just above the ground. And I want this to tile as well. So the first thing I'm going to do, now this is a prank. Watch the prank. If you click on draw mode, I'm going to click on tiled. What is this error? I thought we did it perfectly for the summer ground. Why isn't it working now? Well, that's because I pulled a prank on you to teach you a lesson. I already did this for the summer ground, but we have to do it for the summer background. When we set up tiling on a sprite, what we typically do is click on the sprite, and we want to scroll to mesh type, from type to full rect. Now, the error message, apply. Always click apply. Always click apply. Now, you'll notice that the error message is gone, and the background can get dragged if you want. If you click on rect tool, the background just keeps tessellating and tessellating and tessellating. Wonderful. Okay. So if you want to see how the game looks without leaving the game view, we can click on game and see what the game would look like. What? Where did my bird go? You might be asking. Some of you might not be asking. This is because different OSs handle how things add differently. But yeah, your bird might be completely gone, which is alarming to say the least, but we can get the bird back. So the reason why the bird is gone is because of layering. What is layering? I know you're joking. Layering is like what layer things are on. Come on, man, you use Photoshop. These are the different layers. We can control them over here. Now, we can do this in a couple ways. If we change the layer of this background to negative, you'll see that the bird reappears. Notice that. Cool. We could do that for every single person on this or object in the scene. We could change this, move it behind or in front. We can do the same for the background, move it behind or in front. But I know that with my scene, the background should always be behind everything else, right? So I'm actually going to change the background's sorting layer. So right now we have this default sorting layer, but I can actually make my own sorting layers and change it. So if I select my summer background, I want it to always be behind everything else, right? Once again, I could change this to negative, but instead I'm going to click on sorting layer and click add sorting layer. And then now we have a bunch of sorting layers. I'm going to click plus, name this background. I can spell. Oh, don't look at any of those. And I can drag this above the default. So it renders from top to bottom. So the back is at the back, at the top, and the top is at the back. Okay. So you might be wondering, okay, why is my background still on top? Your background might have been fine this whole time, but this is still an important lesson. You have to change this over here. So if I change this sorting layer, it's behind everything. So now we have a game, but there's no movement. It's pretty whack, if I do say so myself. So if I go back to the birds subfolder, we have two open beak birds. What I can do is select both of these. I didn't show you guys one thing. This slider lets you change the size. So if I go to this list view, it's a bit easier to see. I want the red open 1 and red open 2. I selected both of these by pressing shift, by holding shift while I selected them. So I want red open 1 and red open 2. And then I want to just pull them into this hierarchy over here. And it's going to ask me to make a new animation. So I'm going to call this red bird eyes open. You want things to have descriptive names, right? Not like RBEO or something, because I have to like guess that after. Saves you a lot of time. And it's saved in my arts bird folder. And now you'll see it added a red bird for me here. If I press play, and it actually works, we see one bird is flapping, the other guy fell. Why do I have two birds, and why is one of them whack and the other one's not? If only I could blend the components of these different birds together. Wouldn't that be crazy? So if you look, this bird has it has the rigid body and the polygon collider, whereas this bird has something called an animator controller. So I want this animator controller to be onto this bird. So what I can do is right click on this animator component and click copy component. Then I come back to this bird. I could also select them from here. And I'm going to want to click on these triple dots right here and click paste component as new. Once again, I went from this bird, I copied this animator component. I could also do that by clicking the triple dots and clicking copy. Clicked on this bird, I go to these triple dots and click paste component as new. Now I have an animator component here at the bottom. And if I press play, you'll notice that this bird, hopefully, Unity will never load. Hopefully it will flap its wings. That's the difference. I don't need this other bird, so now I'm going to get rid of this guy. So now if I play, will Unity cooperate? Yes, it does. It's flapping its wings and it fell on the ground. Beautiful. Pretty much Angry Birds. Now we're going to jump into the fun part. I know you guys are incredibly excited for the programming. Whoa, whoa. Programming time. So it's all written in C#. So if you have Microsoft Visual Studio Code installed, that would be ideal. But we can change the editor, which is used by Unity. And it doesn't have to be too complex or too confusing. So it's just very simple to get the bird moving based off of user input. The default Windows editor is Visual Studio. And I can show you where this is set. If you click on Edit, we look down to Preferences. Preferences is over here. And then we come to External Tools and External Script Editor. Mine is Visual Studio Community 2019. This changes like every Unity update. It's kind of funny. And if you're running into some problems and you're not seeing any auto completion or your project isn't working, click on regenerate project files. You'll see that that might be an issue later. Another thing you can do is turn it off and turn it back on. By that I mean Unity, if not your computer, but don't leave the call, of course. And that usually will work. Yes. Okay, sick. So Visual Studio Code 2019. Now we're actually going to add our code. So we're going to come back to these different folders. We have our assets and our packages folder, but what about a code folder? Wonderful question. Typically, we call it scripts. That's what we call it in Unity. So we have our arts and our scenes. I got that by clicking on assets. So I'm going to right click, point at create at the very top, then click on folder and call this scripts. And then in the scripts folder, I can double click it and I can right click once again, go to create, click on C# script. Now you need to name this correctly because C# will automatically create your class within your file, and it will not work if you don't name it properly. So what I'm going to do is name this bird, B-I-R-D, with a capital B. And when I press enter, you'll see that it gives us the file over here. We can't edit it in here though. We need to edit it inside of our code editor. So I can click open here, or I can double click this file. And if I press open, we should get our Visual Studio file. So you might get a Visual Studio, you might need to download Visual Studio, and if so, you might want to log in with a Microsoft account or something. If that comes up, just go through those steps, and I will post some code later on so that if you are a little bit behind, you can catch up. So we're going to come to this file, which is what just opened, and it's our Angry Birds script, and it's called birds, and there are some different things that are confusing. So I'm going to scroll in because I want people to actually see what's going on, and you might be a little bit confused about these random words. What does this mean? One thing at a time. So we have these different grayed out things. And those are not being used. That's why they're grayed out, even though it says using. Ironic, isn't it? What is being used is Unity Engine. So if you've ever used another programming language like Python or JavaScript, you always import things at the start of the file. This is pretty much the same thing, pretty much in every language, like C++ has it too. And we have a public class called bird. Notice how this is called bird, and this matches that file called bird. If this is named something else than this will not work. The reason why the Unity engine is being used is because of this mono behavior thing. So because we're using Unity engine, even though this is just a regular C# file, we're going to have access to all of the Unity specific commands. So once again, make sure these match. We have this void start and this void update. I'll explain what those are in a second. But even more importantly, we have these green lines. So if you haven't seen stuff like this before, these are just comments. In C# you do them with 2 slashes, backslash, I think. And so this is called before the frame update, and this is called once a frame. So if you're having 500 frames per second, this will get called 500 times a second. So any code that's written within here will get ran every frame. So things like handling input, or seeing if you got shot, or seeing certain people getting close or something, that could be handled in the update. So we're going to write a little bit of code. So right now our character falls, and that is not good. We don't want our bird to fall down. We want our bird to sit still, and we can drag it back and then let go for it to fly. So if we come here to line 10, we see these different braces. These tell us what is going to be ran on the start. The code we want to write is going to access our rigid body component and then tell it to become kinematic. What that means is if we come back to this Angry Birds and we click on our bird, you'll see that currently it has something called simulated. Here we go. If I click on simulated and press play, you'll see that he's not going to fall anymore. He doesn't fall anymore. Sick? That's basically what I'm trying to do with the 3D, in C# though. So we're going to come back to our C# file and we're going to write get component span equal to Visual Studio should be auto-completing for you, hopefully. And if it's not, once again, you're going to want to come back to your Unity and go to Preferences, External Tools, Regenerate Project Files. If that doesn't work, make sure Unity is updated, reload everything. Anyways, we're back here, Get Component. We're going to type in Rigid Body 2D, this guy. And the greater than less sign just shows that this is a generic type. And we're going to do open and close parentheses. And after each method call, we're going to do open close parentheses, and then we're going to have a semicolon. So we're not doing anything with it yet, but we want to. So let's put a dot, and we can select what we want to change about this rigid body component. So we're going to want to find is kinematic over here. We can also type it in, is kinematic. So let's see, is kinematic. So is kinematic basically changes whether it still is simulated, but it can only be controlled by our code. So is kinematic, we're gonna set equal to true. Now when we come back to Unity and we press play, we're gonna see that our bird, something bad's supposed to happen, because something bad always happens. Oh yeah, because I still have this unchecked. If you check it, our bird still falls. That's not what we want. We want our bird to stay still. Why isn't it working? Great question. It's because this bird doesn't have the script even attached to it. This is a very common problem. If you've written 5 billion lines of code and you're wondering why none of it is working, there are 100 billion reasons. But one of them that you should check is whether your script is actually on the component you're trying to make it affect. So I'm going to drag this script to the bottom of my bird component so that the bird can actually get what's in the file. This is very important. Then when we press play, it actually worked. I'm surprised. If it still doesn't work, you very likely want to say, actually, is it actually working? You can never trust, there we go. It shouldn't work. It shouldn't have worked. That's why I was confused. If that is checked, I guess it is working. Nice. What I thought I didn't do was save this file, but I guess it's just been ingrained into me for so long that I saved it automatically. Make sure to press Control S to save. That is another pro tip if things aren't working. Okay, so we're going to come back to this file, and now we want our player to be able to click on the bird, interact with it, drag it back and forth. The very first thing we're going to do is have our bird change color when we click so that it's evident that the player is clicking on it. If I click on this, you see I can change the color in the play mode. Sick. We want that to happen on player click. Let me turn that back to white. I want it so that when I'm clicking and holding, he turns red, and then when I let go, he turns back to white. So what I want to do is come to our bird script, and on line 12, we're going to add a couple lines, and we're going to write void, and on mouse down, it's going to autocomplete. You can type this whole thing out if you don't have your autocomplete working. And you'll see that it added a private keyword for me. I don't need that. It's technically not necessary. Private is default, and we don't have any other classes that it's like inheriting from. So it makes it clean. It tells us that it's default, and we don't really need that. So on mouse down, we want the bird color to change. So here we got the rigid body component. So I'm going to get component, and I'm going to find the sprite renderer, and these parentheses, dot, and we're going to find the different properties. We want to take the color, and we want the color to be red. So we can do this in a couple ways. We can call this new color, and then open parentheses, and like 0, 1, 1 or something. And this is RGB. That is one way to do it. We can do the built-in ones though. So let's just call it like color dot red. And make sure to include your semicolons. That's another common thing. Now we're going to come back to Unity, save our file, come back to Unity, and when we click play, we'll see what happens. If I click, he stays red, but he does change color. We have part of it done. We want our bird to turn back to white afterwards. So not this file. We're going to come over here, and we're going to want to have avoid on mouse up. So I like copying and pasting. That's Control C, Control V. So why is this underlining? Because these are the exact same, and it doesn't want you to have like the same number defined with the same parameters, but just twice. So instead, this is on mouse up, and we're going to want to do something different. We're going to want to turn it white. So white. Now, if I save, close, let this load, press play, and then let's see, turns red, turns white, turns red, turns white. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. The game is done. Okay, we're going to come back to C#, and we want to do a whole bunch more. So we want our guy to actually move, right? So if you remember, in Unity, we have this stuff that's transforming the bird. So basically, we want the bird to be transformed when the player's mouse cursor moves. And we want to move the bird to that player mouse position. So let's make a variable to store that position. We can call this vector 3, and let's call it mouse position. We use camel case for variables in C#. So when we're using a variable inside of a method, we use camel case. So that means lowercase for the first one, and then for every other word, we start with a capital letter. And so we're going to make this equal to camera.main. And what this does is it finds the first object tagged with the camera, with main. And your camera should automatically be set to main, but if it isn't, you've been using Unity already, and great job. But otherwise, click here, make sure this is main camera tag. But it should already be. And what we want is find the mouse position of screen to world point of input dot mouse position. That's one way to do it. Now, if we save this, and then actually we want one more line. We want transform dot position. Let me zoom in so everyone can still see. Transform dot position equals mouse position. Uno momento. Transform dot position. Oh yes, forgot one thing. This should all be on mouse drag. So because when the player drags their mouse, we want this to happen. So make sure to wrap this with avoid, similar to these top two. And I spelled position wrong, of course, and equals mouse position. So once again, this is not supposed to work because everything never works on the first time. So I'm supposed to save this and come back to this file. And when I click play, it's not working as intended. Crazy. Let's see why that happened. If we come back to our C# file, we want this to basically to move based off of the mouse position in 3 directions, right? So instead, let's make this a new vector 3 that matches the mouse position dot x comma mouse position dot y for the second parameter, y, and mouse, actually for the z one, notice how everything is a vector 3. We also use vectors 2 in Unity, but vector 3 is the default because Unity is a 3D engine. In fact, one thing I didn't show you guys is that it's currently set to, where is it? It's currently in 2D mode. For some reason, I'm blind and I'm not seeing the. Anyways, Unity is a 3D engine. So typically you can change it to 3D, but I'm not, oh, it's probably because it's still playing. I'm actually a genius. It's in 2D right now. If I click on this, we see that it's actually a 3D game. What? What? We were making a 3D game the whole time. You lied to me. Yes, I did. If we click back on 2D, we can go back to normal view. And if we come back to our C# file, we're going to want transform.position equals new vector mouse position.x, mouse position.y, and transform position.z, because we don't actually have a z mouse position, and so we want the z position to be just what it usually would be. So this kind of keeps it as its default. Okay, and we only move the x and the y, the z starts. We save this, go back to Unity, and we click play, and let's see what happens. What? We have a game. We have a game, guys. I've announced it. We have a game. Okay, a couple things that still need to be done. We want this guy to actually fall down when we let go of him, right? It was working before. Why isn't it working now? Come on, Shinran. Why are you failing me? I'm sorry. I'm trying my best out here. What we want to do is have it fall down when we release the mouse. So how can we do that? Questions. How can we do that? Let's ignore that for now. Instead, we'll have our bird move. Yes, much better. We'll have our bird move when we release the mouse. So if I come back to my start method, I'm going to add a new line, and what I want to do is save the starting position of the bird. So that's why it's in the start. And I'm going to save this in a variable called a field because it's at the class level. And I'm going to type it in the start method because the editor does its magic and it auto-completes for me. So it's going to be called start position because it's the start position, wild. And we prefix it with an underscore because it's not specific to a method, just a naming convention. And then we want the start position to be equal to the first place it was that you clicked. So basically the current position. We could either get this by getting the transform dot position like we did before. However, that's a vector 3 and we're working with 2D vectors, so we can cut out the third one. So instead, we'll get the rigid body's 2D's position. So instead, we'll get component rigid body 2D dot position, and make sure to have that. It's still giving me an error. What? Crazy. Why doesn't the start condition exist in this context? Because we haven't defined our position. We need to give it scope. We need to give it a whole bunch of things. Who cares what that actually means? If you see, there's a little light bulb icon. You can click on that and click generate field bird start position, and this will define a field for us. So it just added this, and we don't need it to be private. We never need it to be, well, you do sometimes. Yeah, we don't need it there. So now we no longer have our error, and we have the start position saved. And what we want to do is whenever our mouse comes up, like here, we want to get where the bird went, essentially. So we want to do subtraction of where the bird is going and where the bird currently is. So we'll do var, that's just a variable, current position equals get component rigid body 2D dot position. I could also call this vector 2. Because variable is just for general variable and var is specific. Oh, don't forget your semicolon. And what is that the only thing wrong? Vector 2, current position, equals get position. Forgot my brackets. Oh my goodness. What am I doing out here? And so we want to find where I'm going. So I want to do my start position minus my current position. So it gives me a direction basically. But the problem with this is, what if I had my start position be here? You don't see where I'm clicking. Be here, and my end position be here. Now, what if I have my start position be here and my end position be here? That's clearly a huge difference. What we only want is the direction, and the magnitude can be normalized. So if you learned about that in math, it's just shrunk down to be like a unit vector. So like the same length, but just pointing in the direction of the difference. So there's some built-in functions to do that for us, so we don't actually have to think of real math. So if we come back to this guy, we're gonna add a couple more lines right in the mouse up. So we're gonna do, what are we gonna do? We're gonna have our vector to direction equal start position. So this variable here, so I'm just going to copy it. Start position minus current position. Second spell, current position. And that's the first step. That's the direction. And then I want to normalize that direction. So direction dot normalize. That will make it into a unit vector. So just a vector that's the same length as all of the other vectors, no matter where I click. And then we're going to want to get component, and we're going to give that rigid body. We actually want to move our bird, right? So let's find our rigid body 2D again. And we're going to add a force. So things make sense in Unity most of the time. So it's just called add force. And let's add a force in the direction. So in the direction times like 100, or let's try 5 just to see. And if that's too low, we'll see if it's too low. So if I save that and I come back to my bird file and I press play, then what happens? Oh yeah, I should probably check up to make sure no one's passed away. Interesting. Important questions are being asked. Okay, I see most people are getting answered though. Okay, glad to hear that. Okay, so if I press play and then I drag, it's not working as intended. Who would have thought? That's kind of wild. He doesn't move very far. What? What? What's wrong with my code? Grr. Okay, what's wrong? It's because we set him to kinematic. Think about it. Think. It's because he's not moving. That's what the kinematic thing was doing, right? So we want to set that to not kinematic. So I just copied this, Control C, and right above here, set this to false. Okay, okay. So it's not kinematic anymore. Let's save. And now let's see. Now let's see. Now let's see. Now let's see. Okay, so he starts off not moving. Then I click. What? It didn't work. I'm so surprised. What? It didn't work. I'm so surprised. Okay. What am I doing wrong? Let's make this 500. Let's make it a bit bigger and save this and see if that works. Reload script assemblies. Play. Did you see that? Let me do it again. Let me do it again. Let me do it again. I'm kind of an Angry Bird king. Holy. I know. It's crazy how much progress we're making. He's moving. Okay. So this sum works pretty sick, and he moves towards the start position. One thing that is kind of whack right now is we're using rigid body a whole bunch of times. So I'm actually going to make this a little bit cleaner by caching our rigid body. So this is just something that is good practice, which is a term I don't like, but we're going to cache our variables because we're using them many times. So this just makes it a little bit easier for our engine to get everything easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new variable called rigid body 2D, and I'm going to make this yeah, this is going to be my rigid body. Oh, whoopsies. There we go. Rigid body 2D. Okay. And then we're going to want to do something. Ignore this for now. Don't ignore it. Write it. But we're going to do something called a void awake. I'll explain this in a second. And this void awake is going to autocomplete, but it's not going to be private because no. And we're going to have our rigid body equal to the get component of my rigid body 2D. And now, wherever I have my get component rigid body, I can instead put my rigid body 2D. So this just makes everything smoother. Put it right before the dot. Technically, you're not going to notice any frame rate difference, but yes, I noticed a cyberpunk joke. This is what they should have done. They should have cached everything. Cache moved everything around. Yeah, so I'm going to highlight the get component 2D. Don't replace the get component sprite renderer because that's a different class. So right after the rigid body, I'll put sprite renderer and underscore sprite renderer underscore. And let's copy this. And over here, we got to do the same thing. So sprite renderer is equal to get, let me zoom in, sorry. Get component sprite renderer. Okay, sick. I can't spell get component. There we go. And so wherever I see sprite renderer, I'm going to put this instead. Okay, and over here. Save that. And hopefully our game still runs. We'll see. It would be a shame that this wonderful work went all to waste. Yes, it still runs and it still moves. Beautiful. Okay, we keep going. Now, yeah, what does this even do? What is this awake thing? Wonderful question. I'll put you through a little bit of documentation school. I know this is some riveting work. This file, once again, is in this, it's right here. This is the documentation link. It's on this original game dev file, but I can read it to you like a bedtime story. This is the Unity documentation, and here we see a beautiful diagram, that's what it's called, of like the cycle of our Unity stuff. So we start with awake, and basically the reason why awake is here is because it's for things that are like internal to a method, like things, if I had something internal to an object or a class, like in our bird, even before we want to initialize it, we want to save them in awake. Start is like awake, but it's for like referencing another object. We haven't really done that very often here. The order doesn't really matter. They're pretty similar, but it's just for execution order and to be able to manage things. What else? Things to note on enable is whenever the object is turned on or enabled. There's one for disable, and there's also on destroy. We won't dive too much into this, but documentation, wonderful thing. Okay, we'll go back to code. So now we'll work a bit on a new type of variable. And so this variable is a beautiful one that allows us to actually make changes to code in real time. Like, what if I didn't want my launch force to be 500? Can I change this without having to exit my game? Yes, I can. So inside, oh, wrong file. Inside this file, I can call something called serialized field in brackets, which are the square brackets, and I'm gonna make this a float, and I'm gonna have this be our launch force. So the float should not be up there, it should be here. Float and launch force, and we're gonna make this equal to 500, and this launch force should be used in ask for direction. So instead of direction times 500, we'll instead have launch force. And if we save and we come back to our game file and we press play and we click on our bird, we shall see, what shall we say? If I click on the red bird here, you'll see this, hopefully. And we can change the launch force directly in the Unity game. Sick. More progress. And I'm going to come back to my Angry Birds file, and I'm actually going to add some crates for the bird to collide with. So let's go to props. We can add a crate here. Actually, let's click on the move tool so that thing snaps for me. It's still not snapping. Click on snap. Click on this. Drag it in. Then when we move it, it snaps. Okay. It's like 1.5. That's horrible. Okay. Yo, we can live with this. We can live with this. So I'm going to drag the different types of crates. And yeah, I'm going to have to get that to be 2.5. I'm going to have to get this one to be negative. Let's first move it in place. Let's move them all in place and get crates all stacked up and whatnot. Whatnot is such a wonderful term, you know? Whatnot. Okay, we'll do that to all of these so that they're all in line, so that our bird can knock them over. Not that, this crate. I'm gonna let's put 6 crates, so we can just keep dragging the different types of crates. And let's actually flip them so that they're different. So if you look here, there's a flip. You can flip these to have them be varied. And let's say I wanted to change this crate 2 to a crate 1. What I could do is 2 things. I can click here, and what I clicked was this dot that's right beside crate 2, and I can click crate 1 instead. Or I could drag crate 1 on top of crate 2. And that could change could change a sprite if I ever needed to do that. And let's move these so that they're all on top of each other. That should be 0.5. No, it shouldn't. It should be negative 0.5. Yes, it should. It should be 0.5. It should be 1.5. It should be 2.5. And let's have these stacked directly on top of each other. Okay. The bird's not going to collide. Time is ticking, so I will make these all into, I'll give them all collision properties. So we're going to want to add a box collider, because that's in the shape of a box, and we can add those to all of these. So that we can actually have it collide with the beautiful bird that's coming in. So I'm clicking on all of the crates, and I'm giving a box collider attribute. And also, what else? I think it should work now. So if we press play and I drag this bird back and move it forward, it collides, but it's not moving nearly fast enough. So let's actually change this variable to 1,500, save that, and let's replay and see what happens. Probably did not save. Classic Chimera. Come back here, save that. Come to this, press play. Let's see what the variable says here if I click on the bird. It still says 500. Let's change this to 1500. We drag. Ah, they don't topple. What? I'm so confused. This can't possibly be true. It's almost like they don't have physics or something. So we're going to want to add the same thing we had on the bird. So that was a rigid body. But yeah, so we have a collider. Let me think. Yes, we have the box collider. Yes, they're stacked. Hold on. Physics 2D. Okay, I'll try one more time. I have a very weak bird. Anyways, there are only 9 minutes left in the presentation. However, I do hope that we learned a little bit about Unity. The whole point of this is kind of to light a fire under you, so that if you want to keep going with this game development stuff, you have, you know, a sort of avenue into what it can be like and some of the steps, and that it really isn't as hard as it might seem from the outside point of view. We've done a lot, obviously. We've pretty much made all of Flappy Bird. And I think anyone who says otherwise is a liar and a fraud. And yeah, it's been a pretty sweet time hanging out with all of you guys. I can't really hear anything you're saying, but that is all right. We've done the demo. Challenge. I basically want you guys to keep working on this if you'd like. Add your own twist, your own flair. There are a couple of key challenges that I want you guys to focus on. First of all, you might notice that if I come back to my Unity game, wherever that is, and I click play, I can drag this wherever I want. Why can I drag this wherever I want? That's not good. I want only to be able to drag it, you know, to this line. And I will actually give you guys a little bit of a hint. So this is some more of the code that I was writing earlier. So I will copy this and paste this inside this document if you want a little bit of a head start to figure things out. Where should I put this? So I should put this at the bottom here. Yes. And then I will answer some questions. Not that font. I will do Comic Sans. So come on. It's not my first choice. Okay, and let's not make this a length. Let's not make it that big, and let's make it like that. All right, sick. Yes. Okay, now let me check the questions that you guys might have been sending real quick. There were two places. One sec. Aha, there we go. I see the questions. Question 1, how do we pronounce your name? You pronounce my name Chinamaram Chiva. Have you built any other games that you could show us? Yes, I've built some other games. They're mostly commissioned by different companies that I could show you. My website is kind of like a game. If I go to chinamaram.com, am I still screen sharing? Let me see. Let me stop screen sharing there. Let me stop screen sharing here. And let me start screen sharing here. Everything's a work in progress though. And it's not much of a game, but I have some other games on Oak Hammock Marsh site. You go to games here actually. Anyways, different organizations. I don't know how proud I am of the work I've done. So I'd actually, I might keep that to myself. And what else do we have? Other questions. Let me find the rest. What is a mesh? Great question. So when you have a 3D object, it's usually composed of different math triangles, right? And so when you have all of these triangles together, they make something we call a mesh. You can think of it like a soccer ball. You have the different hexagons, them together make like a mesh. Why did you choose this career? Who doesn't like games? I mean, games are sick. And I think everyone could have a great time if they just lightened up a little and played some games. Are the drawings done by yourself? No. I actually have some people I credit. We keep going at the end. These guys, thank them. They're pretty great. And yeah, the challenge is to complete this. We do have 4 minutes left. I'm willing to take more questions or do some more gaming. So whatever you guys would like, if you want to write some comments. What is the common thoughts? If you just want to, let me scroll down so I can actually see what people are saying. Link to ask questions. Yes, there is that one as well. Did I ever build my own game engine? Not yet. Honestly, that is something that would look good on a resume. And that's all that matters, isn't it? Poggers, yes. Unity is finally installing. I think I fixed it. Oh yeah. And so I posted some of the script in the Google Doc. So if you were having some trouble, you can take a look at this. It should all be fairly self-explanatory, but maybe that's just me being me. So yes, I will point out a couple things in this. So this is to set the launch force at the start. The void awake gets the stuff before it starts. So it sets the rigid bodies to get components, and this was for caching. The start, we set the start position to equal the rigid body's position, and we make the object not be able to move. That's the kinematic. When we have mouse down, we change the color to red. Some of these things we didn't get to. So on mouse up, we change the current position to the where we're currently holding, and the direction is the start position minus the current position. Then we normalize that vector, and then we set kinematic to false so that we can actually move again. And then we apply a force to the rigid body in the direction that we're launching it, and we change the color to white on release. On the drag of the mouse, we want the mouse position to basically equal where the camera is, so the input mouse position. And then we can transform that position in X and Y, but not in Z because we're not using 3D. Update is called once a frame, and on collision, oh yeah, I don't think we got to this part. The coroutines basically would reset the angry bird after they've done their angry work. And then it resets after a delay, and then that waits for 3 seconds. So this uses an IE numerator, and then the rigid body's position is the start position. After you've reset, this basically just sets it back to the reset values. And one more thing is I did this. I set the max mouse position to be 0 so that you can't just cross over and knock over the boxes without firing your angry bird. Yes, let me check the questions one more time before things. Oh yeah, here we go. Oh yeah, there was that one. And then there were these questions for after, in case you guys still have any more. Yes, I will check those after, in case you guys still have any more. Yeah, I think this was pretty solid. Accidentally transformed and see. Oh, yes, that would happen. Do I have a Discord? Yes, I have a Discord. It is Chinamram number 3691. And then it's a pretty uncommon name. So if you just look me up on most of the social medias that the children are using nowadays, you can find me. Any opinions? Yes. Unreal Engine is beautiful. I wish I'd done my workshop on that instead. I'm kidding. Yeah, it's been a while since I even used Unity, to be honest. So some of this was new to me. I haven't used Godot. I didn't say that. Hey, don't put words in my mouth. Please, how do you add sound? Godot seems cool for TV stuff. So you can add sound. You want to import it, and then you can add a different component. So yeah, audio source, and then you can select where the audio source comes from, and babadoo babada, play on wake, whether you want to loop it or not, potato potato. Unity follows the same structure. You're always just adding components and applying animations, all that fun stuff. Personal favorite game, most complicated game. Interesting. I've not heard of Orsino. I might have to look that up. My most complicated game, something called Spare Air. It was a pretty large project, many levels, fun. Favorite One Piece character? You can't answer that question. They're all too beautiful, and it's definitely Zoro. Personal favorite game might have to be Minecraft. You know what it is. Childhood, all of that fun stuff. And by the way, you guys are now free to leave because 9 o'clock has indeed passed. Pog R indeed. Yeah, thank you guys all for coming.
Yeah, thank you guys all, and thank you so much for presenting. And yeah, just a quick message to everyone. The associated challenge is on Hackett Forward. I'll just send the link in chat one more time, and it's also on Discord. So yeah, we have a ton of prizes associated with completing challenges, so please try them out. They're super fun. And yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you guys all. I really appreciate you guys. See ya. I will probably just sit here too for a little while though. You like Zoro too? Maybe Chopper. I have a Chopper shirt actually. See? Beautiful. Just got that the other day. Yes, sir.